One day after a night of drinking, Park Ryul was completely drunk. He complained to his friend about how that professor had made things difficult for him. After all, he wasn't even an art student. This wasn't the first time his friend had heard him rant like this. Suddenly, Park Ryul looked up and spotted a claw machine right in front of him. Feeling a sudden urge to try his luck grabbing a plushie, he invited his friend to join in. His friend had no interest at all, thinking Park Ryul was just drunk and acting crazy. He even said that when Park Ryul sobered up tomorrow and asked where the doll came from, he'd give him a good beating. But Park Ryul brushed him off and started the machine. When Park Ryul asked him, "Don't you think these plush toys are pitiful?" His friend just sighed and told him that up until now, every plushie he'd bought had cursed him. They wanted him to feel their pain. But Park Ryul didn't care what he said. He was completely focused on grabbing one. He prayed that he'd get that pink plushie. The next second, the claw caught it. Park Ryul was over the moon. He really was like the ancient Greek god of plushie catching. It cost him 30,000 won to fish that thing out, and his friend just rolled his eyes again. Just as Park Ryul was getting ready to head home with the doll, he suddenly felt dizzy. Then his whole body started tipping backward out of his control. Before his friend could grab him, Park Ryul fell backwards in a heap, right there with the doll. The next day, when Park Ryul woke up, he found several other plush toys just like this one lying next to him. What's more, this place didn't look anything like his own apartment. He wondered if he'd gotten drunk and been kidnapped. When he touched his face, it felt incredibly soft. His hands were soft, too. When he looked closer, he realized his hands had turned into plush doll hands. Park Ryul couldn't believe his eyes. What on earth was happening? After grabbing the doll, the guy had a bad fall. When he woke up again, he somehow turned into that very doll. After falling asleep in Orlov Palace, the pink-haired doll was still absolutely starving. Up until this moment, he hadn't even had a single drop of water. He really wished he could get something to eat. Right now, his eyes were locked firmly on the fruit basket sitting on the table. He roughly estimated that the distance from where he was to the table was about 2 meters. If he was still human, it would only take 3 or 4 steps to get there. But the problem now was that he was just a two-headed cotton doll. One way or another, he had to get off this bed first. Suddenly, he heard something moving. The pink-haired doll spun around in a panic, thinking that Dagon had woken up. It turned out it was just someone rolling over in their sleep. Mikhail Orlov, the Grand Duke, was the ruler of this city. The guy had an extremely cold personality. To catch Lie, who had hidden in the palace because he couldn't stand Orlov's extreme stubbornness, he even instigated a rebellion. The pink-haired doll kept thinking, "I absolutely can't be found by that idiot. If he finds me, he'll probably tear me to pieces, and all the cotton inside me will go flying everywhere. Being discovered by him means certain death, but if I don't eat anything, that's also certain death." So the pink-haired doll decided to take a chance. He planned to climb down first, then make his way to the table. He looked down at the floor. This was way too high. Would he really be able to jump down? But right now, he was so hungry his stomach was sticking to his backbone. If he missed today, who knew when he'd see food again? So he took a big leap. Of course, he ended up falling embarrassingly hard onto the floor. But he could still handle pain like this. All he needed to do now was climb up onto the table. The thing was, he didn't have human hands anymore, and his head was too big. Climbing up was tough. After using every bit of strength he had, the pink-haired doll finally managed to climb up. He was just getting ready to rest for a minute when suddenly Orlov's voice came from behind him. The pink-haired doll jumped out of his skin. Orlov looked at the doll on the table and said confusedly, "This doesn't seem like it was here before, was it?" Right then, the pink-haired doll's heart was pounding like crazy. He was thinking, "I'm done for." What must be will be, sooner or later. The pink-haired doll who'd turned into a plush toy still ended up in Orlov's hands. Even though it sounded unbelievable, he really had turned into a doll. Park Ryul kept hoping this was all a dream. He kept slapping his own face, trying to wake up, but nothing worked. Then he thought of a plan. He slowly made his way to the edge of the table and peeked down. It really was terribly high, but if he jumped from this height, he thought that would wake him up from the dream. He inched toward the edge, even got a running start, but in the end he was just too scared. Instead, he pushed the other dolls sitting on the table down first. If they were there to cushion his fall, he wouldn't feel as much pain. This time he was really going to jump. After nervously counting to 3, he was just about to leap when someone suddenly walked in. Panicked, The pink-haired doll froze right in his tracks. When the person saw all the dolls scattered on the floor, they hurried over to pick them up. The pink-haired doll was seething. He'd gone through so much trouble just to push them down. Just then, Li Bei's uncle came downstairs. Li Bei asked him if there had been a thief in the shop, since the whole place was such a mess, and started helping tidy up. When the pink-haired doll heard the name Li Bei, it sounded instantly familiar to him. When his uncle came over to help pack up the dolls, the pink-haired doll heard Grand Duke Orlov's name mentioned again in their conversation. It suddenly hit him. This was the character from the crazy obsessive love in the novel Red Prison. This was a BL novel he'd stumbled across before. Since he liked this genre, he hadn't minded reading it back then. The ending of this novel was sad. In the story, when Orlov's aide-de-camp handed in his resignation, that was when Orlov first showed his mad obsession. Once he realized his feelings were love, he completely snapped, broke his aide's ankle, locked him up in chains, and starved him. When the aide escaped and hid behind the emperor, it even sparked a whole war.
And that aide-de-camp? That was Li Bei,
standing right in front of him right now. The pink-haired doll couldn't believe it had ended up inside the world of Red Prison. And as a stuffed doll, too. Just then, Li Bei told his uncle he was leaving, and on the way out, he picked up this pink-haired doll and took it with him. The pink-haired doll struggled like crazy. He did not want to go out and get himself killed. Suddenly, Li Bei paused and said in confusion, Is this doll moving? The pink-haired doll went completely still right away, not daring to move an inch. He thought if they found out he could move and talk, they'd think he was cursed and destroy him for sure. But Li Bei was still fine right now, which meant the plot of the novel hadn't started yet. The pink-haired doll decided he'd find a chance to escape. If he didn't get tangled up with that crazy Grand Duke, he'd be okay. But the very next second, he heard Li Bei tell the coachman, "To Grand Duke Orlov's residence." The pink-haired doll basically died on the spot. When they arrived at Grand Duke Orlov's residence and saw the doll, Orlov asked confusedly, "What is this?" Li Bei told him it was just a doll. Orlov poked it with his finger and said it didn't feel anything special. The pink-haired doll peeked at the two of them, but he still couldn't believe that the characters from the novel were sitting right in front of him in the flesh. Then Orlov asked Li Bei if he liked this sort of thing. Li Bei told him it was a birthday present for him. Orlov was surprised to hear that, and the pink-haired doll was even more stunned. He prayed desperately that Orlov would just turn it down. Orlov picked up the doll and poked it again, telling Li Bei that this was totally lacking in sincerity. After all, he'd gone to so much trouble to prepare a gift for Li Bei's birthday. Li Bei replied that as Grand Duke, Orlov had already received tons of luxurious gifts from the royal family and high society. He didn't want his present to be just another one of those. This doll was one of a kind. At that, Orlov broke into a happy smile and said he'd take good care of the doll. When the pink-haired doll heard that, he felt more desperate than ever. When Orlov woke up, he picked up the doll from the table and wondered out loud, "Did I put it here? Or can it move by itself?" The thought of that was a little scary. Orlov quickly comforted himself that it was impossible. Watching him talk to himself like that, the pink-haired doll was surprised. He never thought Orlov would be so timid. Then Orlov just tossed the doll aside casually and left. The pink-haired doll wanted to yell, "What happened to promising he'd take good care of me?" But very quickly, his attention went right back to that fruit basket over there. He told himself, "I'll escape tomorrow." Park Ryul couldn't believe Mikhail was so timid that he'd gotten scared of just a doll. Once he was sure Mikhail had left, Park Ryul got ready to escape, but he still wanted to check out the dining room first. Suddenly, he noticed there were lots of jewels on the table. Thinking about how Mikhail had pushed him around, he decided he couldn't just leave like he had to take something with him. So he picked out a diamond ring, got ready to run happily. Just as he reached the door, Mikhail suddenly came back. Park Ryul turned his head with difficulty and froze in place, not daring to move a muscle. When Mikhail saw the situation, he was startled too. This time he'd really been caught red-handed. He was done for. Mikhail started shaking all over, then yelled loudly for Karen. Hearing the call, Karen hurried in from outside the door and asked what was wrong. When Park Ryul heard the name Karen, it sounded familiar. Karen was the knight commander of the Orlov family, Mikhail's right-hand man. In the novel, he'd been the one leading the charge when the rebellion broke out. Mikhail pointed over toward where Park Ryul was and told Karen to check out the doll. At that, Park Ryul let out a breath of relief. Mikhail still thought he was just a normal doll. Karen picked up the doll and looked it over thoroughly, then told Mikhail, It's just a small, ordinary doll. Mikhail asked him, "Are you sure there's nothing strange about it?" Karen looked again more carefully and noticed the diamond ring on the doll's hand. He asked Mikhail if he'd put it there himself. Mikhail got angry right away and immediately denied it. Karen joked that it couldn't have been the doll that brought it there itself. Since they hadn't found anything out of the ordinary, Mikhail took the doll back. He squeezed it hard and poked its face, but even after that, he still felt a little uneasy looking at the doll. So he put it inside a drawer. Park Ryul was uncomfortable there. It was narrow and dark, and he could barely breathe. When they heard him struggling around inside the drawer, both men jumped. Mikhail refused to admit he'd heard anything, so Karen asked him if he was scared. After that, Mikhail sent for Libe and told him that the doll could move. Libe listened with a huge question mark on his face. That doll shouldn't have that kind of function. By now, Park Ryul couldn't stand being cooped up in the drawer anymore. He pushed hard against the drawer and climbed out. Just at that moment, he heard Mikhail suggest that they should burn him. Park Ryul got so scared that he yelled out, "No!" Both men heard the voice and looked over toward the drawer. They saw with their own eyes the doll talking. Libe was shocked, and Mikhail was stunned too. At this point, Park Ryul tried to keep up the act, repeating, "No!" again, like he was just a wind-up doll that said the same phrase on loop. Mikhail pointed at him and asked Libe what he thought they should do. When even Libe said they should burn him, Park Ryul was terrified. He immediately dropped to his knees and begged them to spare him. He said he didn't know how to explain it, but after waking up from a night of drinking, he just turned into this. Then he kept crying and pleading for his life. The two of them just stared at the scene. Mikhail tried to look calm outside, but he was still scared deep down. He'd had a bad feeling about this doll from the start. There was something off about it. He'd even been too afraid to sleep properly with it in the room. Park Ryul desperately explained that he wasn't some kind of weird doll. If they spared him this once, he promised he'd live a good, honest life. But at this point, Mikhail wasn't about to believe him. Park Ryul looked up at him and said that if he didn't believe him, that was fine. He could just kick him out instead, because he wanted to go find his original body. When Mikhail heard that, his face darkened. He said, "Why would I do that?" When Mikhail heard Park Ryul boldly calling his name like that, he started threatening him again. When Park Ryul found out Mikhail didn't plan to let him go, he was completely dumbfounded. He'd almost forgotten this man was a crazy, obsessive top. He quickly turned to Libe next to him for help, but he never expected Libe to turn him down straight away, saying this wasn't within his scope of responsibility. Then Mikhail directly threatened Park Ryul not to even think about running away. Park Ryul was so scared he was almost crying. Suddenly his stomach started growling loudly. He hadn't eaten anything this whole time, so he had no choice but to beg Mikhail to give him something to eat. Before long, a whole table full of delicious food was prepared just for him. Park Ryul ate his fill happily. Every single dish was delicious. Throughout the whole meal, Mikhail never took his eyes off him. It really did look like he was enjoying his food. His cheeks were puffed out like they were going to burst. Then Mikhail asked him what his name was. Park Ryul told him his name right away. Mikhail heard it and asked, "You were a commoner before, right?" At that moment, Park Ryul didn't understand why he was asking. That was until Mikhail turned to Libe and asked, "According to imperial law, what is the punishment for theft?" Libe told him that normally it's corporal punishment, anywhere from 30 to 100 lashes. Even for first-time offenders, if the value stolen is large enough, additional punishments like cutting off a hand can be added depending on the situation. Then he mentioned the ring Park Ryul had taken. Its value was around 35,000 gold coins. Mikhail stared at Park Ryul with a fierce look on his face and asked Libe, "What should the sentence be for a thief who steals something worth this much?" Libe said that for such a huge sum, after the corporal punishment, they could also consider cutting off his limbs before beheading him. Park Ryul was so terrified he quickly took the ring off and gave it back. He apologized again, saying he'd do anything if they spared his life. Mikhail asked him if he really would do anything. When Park Ryul said yes, Mikhail agreed to let him go, on the condition that Park Ryul unconditionally obeyed every order he gave. Park Ryul thanked him profusely right away. Sitting next to them, Libe didn't really understand why Mikhail was doing this. He just figured Mikhail thought the doll was amusing. When Mikhail went out that day, he took Park Ryul along with him. Looking at the scenery outside, Park Ryul was full of excitement and asked where they were going. When he saw the look on Mikhail's face, he got scared immediately. He realized he'd made Mikhail angry by asking directly without using a proper title. So he quickly tried out several different forms of address. Mikhail told him he could just call him by his name. At that, Park Ryul relaxed. He thought Mikhail was going to make him call him Your Excellency. It looked like Mikhail wanted a closer relationship than that, so he boldly just called him Mikhail right to his face. When Li Bei heard him call him that, he broke out in a cold sweat. Even Mikhail was pretty surprised by it. Park Ryul didn't realize what he'd done wrong and kept using the address, even joking and asking if Mikhail was planning to sell him off. Li Bei was just about to warn him when suddenly Mikhail spoke up and told Li Bei to throw the doll out the window. Park Ryul froze up completely from fear. He immediately started apologizing, begging Mikhail to spare him. Mikhail warned him to remember clearly what situation he was in right now, then told Li Bei to put him down. Park Ryul was still a little curious, but this time he addressed Mikhail properly. Park Ryul asked where they were going now, and Mikhail told him they were heading to the palace. Then he mentioned there was an annoying person there. When Park Ryul realized he was talking about the emperor, Li Bei cut in and said that still wasn't an appropriate way to refer to him. He was the emperor, after all. This made Park Ryul remember the original plot. Li Bei had ended up running away to the palace because he couldn't stand Mikhail anymore, and that was when Mikhail launched the rebellion. He tried to remember what happened after the rebellion. Did it succeed or fail? He'd read the original story already, but he couldn't remember what happened next right now. Had the ending been so shocking that he'd just forgotten it? But even more important than that, would he ever be able to get out of this novel world? Watching Park Ryul grumbling to himself beside him, Mikhail poked him with his finger. Park Ryul jumped in fright and quickly turned around, asking what was wrong. Mikhail asked him what he was looking at. Park Ryul told him he was looking at the scenery outside. Then he said the flowers over there were beautiful. He didn't know what kind of flowers they were, and it must take a lot of work to take care of them. Mikhail just quietly stared at him, then a smile spread across his face. He thought to himself, I really did pick up something interesting this time. Park Ryul never expected that this trip to the palace would end with him unexpectedly getting his hands on an egg. Now he was going to be a dad. After stepping off the carriage, he was completely stunned by how grand and magnificent the palace looked. He quickly jumped into the front pocket of Mikhail's coat. He was scared Mikhail would do what he'd done before, carry him around by the head, so this time he decided to get in first. Even though he was just a doll, Mikhail had practically pulled all his hair out last time. When Li Bei saw how things were, he asked Park Ryul if he wanted to sit in his pocket instead, since he'd stretched the Grand Duke's clothes all out of shape. But Mikhail said it was fine, they could just go like this. He kept pushing Park Ryul deeper into the pocket. Even when Park Ryul said it was stuffy in there, Mikhail just told him to deal with it. Park Ryul felt so wrong. If this was how it was going to be, why even bring him along? It would have been better just to leave him sitting on a shelf at home. He'd thought he'd get to walk around and see the palace, but instead he was stuck in this narrow, suffocating pocket. When Emperor Andrei saw Mikhail arrive, he greeted him warmly. Mikhail and Li Bei immediately bowed to him in respect. Over 100 years ago, the reigning emperor at the time, Sergei, was a total playboy from the Defias family. He completely neglected state affairs and only cared about satisfying his own greedy desires. One day, the Albaroba family pulled the emperor off the throne and seized power for themselves. But a throne taken through rebellion naturally sparked resistance. The Orlov family, which had made enormous contributions to unifying the empire, threw their support behind the new emperor, and the resistance gradually died down. These days, the current imperial family and the Orlov family have been close friends for over 100 years. After a while, the emperor waved to dismiss his servants. Once they'd left, he sighed and started complaining that being an emperor was exhausting. He asked Mikhail if he'd be willing to take the throne instead. The emperor said the nobleman kept hounding him to get married quickly and produce an heir, and it was driving him crazy. Mikhail thought this behavior was unprofessional for an emperor, but the emperor didn't see anything wrong with it. He was just complaining to an old friend he hadn't seen in ages. What was the problem? Then he turned to Li Bei and asked him, wouldn't you rather be an imperial advisor than just an advisor to the Grand Duke? Li Bei told him straight away he didn't want to. He was already busy enough as it was. If he became an imperial advisor, he'd only be even busier. The emperor said he couldn't do anything by himself and kept trying to convince Li Bei to come work for him. If Li Bei helped him out, things would be a lot easier for him. But once again, Li Bei turned him down. Trapped in the pocket, Park Ryul could barely breathe and kept squirming around inside. Feeling him moving non-stop, Mikhail quietly told him not to even think about climbing out. The Emperor noticed Mikhail seemed a little off and asked him if something was wrong with his chest. That was when Park Ryul suddenly burst out of the pocket. He was literally about to suffocate in there. Sitting next to him, Li Bei sighed. He really didn't want to be dealing with this scene right now. Even Mikhail had a massive headache. The Emperor just stared in shock at what had just happened. Park Ryul grinned at the Emperor and greeted him politely, but he'd leaned too far forward and his whole body ended up falling right out of the pocket. Panicked, he grabbed onto the edge of Mikhail's pocket and yelled for someone to catch him. Li Bei just closed his eyes. He wished he didn't know anything about this whole situation. The Emperor turned to Mikhail and asked, "Is he under a dark magic curse?" Mikhail told him it wasn't magic, then just said, "Let him fall," and pushed Park Ryul the rest of the way down. The Emperor was confused. If it wasn't dark magic, then what was this? Mikhail told him it was exactly what it looked like. He's a doll. Park Ryul got back up on his feet and introduced himself. "Hello, my name is Park Ryul. Mikhail says I can call you Your Majesty. You can call me whatever you like." The Emperor was still shocked that there could be a doll that talks and moves just like a person. He said that to be safe, it would be better to burn it. Park Ryul got so scared he immediately hid behind Mikhail's back. He told the Emperor that even though he looked suspicious, he wasn't a bad doll and he wouldn't hurt anyone. When the Emperor just kept staring at him, Park Ryul started sweating. After a moment, the Emperor agreed to let him stay. He told Mikhail that if he ever needs an exorcism later on, he can just come find him. He'll send a professional exorcist over right away. Then they got down to business. The Emperor ordered the present to be brought out. A guard rolled a large treasure chest over to where they were standing. The Emperor told them this was a gift from the Duchy of Aeneas, but he didn't want it. He couldn't just give a ducal gift to anyone randomly, but if he gifted it to Grand Duke Orlov, the duchy would have no choice but to accept it. Mikhail just rolled his eyes. He knew the Emperor was just passing off the problem to someone else. The Emperor told him the egg is supposed to bring good luck, and that it's something Mikhail would need. Then he ordered the chest to be opened. Park Ryul was so excited, he really wanted to see what was inside. When the Emperor saw how eager he was, he thought Park Ryul was cute and told Mikhail to take good care of him. Park Ryul looked at the egg in surprise and wondered what would hatch out of it. The Emperor told him he'd just have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, Mikhail and Li Bei were both getting headaches. Now they had another annoying thing to deal with. Park Ryul happily asked the Emperor if he could give the egg a name. He said he wanted to call him Lucky. The Emperor thought that was a great name. Mikhail and Li Bei just looked on in disbelief. These two really were a perfect match for each other. Park Ryul happily pressed his cheek against the egg. "From now on, I'm your dad. Grow up big and strong soon." When Mikhail forced Park Ryul to eat bread, he felt deeply satisfied. At night, when it was time to sleep, Park Ryul still couldn't take his eyes off the egg. He was completely enamored with it, and even told the egg to call him Dad. Mikhail sat beside him, utterly exasperated by this behavior. It was ridiculous. Park Ryul was barely bigger than the egg itself, and here he was trying to be a dad. Even a sheep needs an incubator to be born, after all. Hearing that, Park Ryul immediately argued back. Taking good care of your child and watching them grow is what parents are supposed to do. Mikhail saw that it was getting late and told him to hurry up and go to sleep. Park Ryul turned to look at him and asked in surprise if he really had to sleep right next to him. Mikhail asked back, "Where else do you expect to sleep?" Park Ryul worried that Mikhail would roll over and crush him. Mikhail, annoyed by his chattering, just reached out and grabbed him, saying, "I'll stay away from you, don't worry." Park Ryul couldn't argue anymore, said goodnight to the egg, and settled down to sleep. Looking at Park Ryul sleeping peacefully beside him, Mikhail felt a little bad for him. A moment later, Park Ryul felt something soft cover his body. He opened his eyes and saw it was a handkerchief. He realized Mikhail had given it to him to use as a blanket. Park Ryul immediately thanked him. A doll that can move and talk like a person suddenly appeared in Mikhail's life out of nowhere. In Mikhail's eyes, Park Ryul was silly, high maintenance, and more than a little annoying. But then one day, Park Ryul started acting strange. Mikhail was in the middle of eating when he noticed how odd Park Ryul was acting, so he stopped and asked what was wrong. Park Ryul told him it was nothing. Mikhail picked up a piece of bread and held it out to him, but Park Ryul refused it. That made Mikhail even more confused. Park Ryul counted on his fingers. "It's already been 10 days. Mikhail watched him increasingly uneasily, wondering to himself, can dolls even get pregnant? But Park Ryul is a man. But if a doll can already move and talk like a person, I guess anything is possible. At that point, Park Ryul worked up his courage and walked over to Mikhail. Mikhail was shocked. He thought his guess was right, that Park Ryul really was pregnant. The next second, Park Ryul shouted that he wanted to eat. He wanted steamed rice, and he was sick of all this cream and cheese. He wanted kimchi jjigae with a cracked egg, ramyun, and extra kimchi. If he didn't get something spicy soon, he was really going to lose it. After all, he was Korean. After realizing that this was all Park Ryul wanted to say, Mikhail's face immediately darkened. There was a loud clang as he stabbed his knife into the steak. He threatened Park Ryul. Come on, it's easy to deal with a little doll like you, isn't it? I could just cut off your arms and legs and sew them back on. Even with just this knife, I could cut your tiny little body into pieces, can't I? Park Ryul was so scared he was breaking out in a cold sweat. Mikhail asked him again, are you going to eat the bread? This time, Park Ryul obediently took the bread Mikhail gave him and forced it into his mouth. Seeing him like this, Mikhail felt an unexpected sense of satisfaction. Later, when Park Ryul was talking to Li Bei, he asked why Li Bei worked for someone like Mikhail. Li Bei told him, because Mikhail pays well. Park Ryul was even more confused. Didn't the emperor offer you twice as much money as this? Li Bei said, money's important, but my free time at night is also important. If I worked for the emperor, I'd work myself to death. Then he defended Mikhail, telling Park Ryul, Mikhail isn't the kind of person who hurts people for no reason. When he heard that, Park Ryul started laughing to himself. If Li Bei knew what was waiting for him in the original story, he'd run away immediately, that was for sure. Noticing how small Park Ryul was, Li Bei remembered what Park Ryul had said about his original body and said he hoped Park Ryul would get his body and memories back soon and turn back into a human. Park Ryul just nodded along. He couldn't very well tell Li Bei he was from another world after all. But he still thanked Li Bei for his kindness. Because a guest had arrived, Li Bei headed out. After he left, Park Ryul sighed. He's such a good person. Even though he's just a character in a novel, we've spent time talking together, and I've really grown to care about him. Come to think of it, Lucky wasn't in the original novel at all. Does that mean this is all happening before the main plot of the story starts? If the story follows its original course, Mikhail isn't going to let Li Bei go, is he? He remembered now. This is the world of the novel Red Prison. Park Ryul had originally planned to escape before the bloodshed of the main story began. But if he just lets things go the way they're supposed to, what will happen to Li Bei? Should he just tell Li Bei the truth and ask him to escape with him? But would Li Bei even believe him that this is a world from a novel? And he might just go tell Mikhail everything. But if he does nothing, terrible things are going to happen to Li Bei. He still couldn't remember what happened next in the novel, no matter how hard he tried. It gave him a headache. Park Ryul ran over to the egg and started pouring his heart out, saying he just didn't know what to do. Suddenly, he heard a cracking sound coming from the incubator. The egg was splitting open. Mikhail forcibly gave Park Ryul a bath, and by the time he was done, Park Ryul's whole body was misshapen. When he saw the eggshell cracking, Park Ryul was over the moon. Was Lucky really going to hatch this soon? He wasn't even ready to be a dad. He scrambled around looking for the incubator's open button, but his arms were too short to reach it. Just then, Mikhail walked over and asked why there was so much noise. Park Ryul told him Lucky was hatching and begged him to help find the button. When he saw the eggshell was already cracked open, he kept urging Mikhail to hurry up. Then Mikhail pressed the button, and Park Ryul waited eagerly, wondering what was going to come out. First, a little yellow tail poked out, and then wings. Then Lucky climbed completely out of the egg. It turned out to be a baby dinosaur. It was so unbelievably cute. Park Ryul was ecstatic and excitedly turned to Mikhail to share his joy. He said he'd never seen such a cute dinosaur before. Its big round eyes, its bouncy little butt. Lucky really was the cutest thing ever. No sooner had he finished speaking than Lucky clamped down on Park Ryul's head with its mouth. Park Ryul screamed in terror and yelled for Mikhail to come help him. Mikhail hurried over and grabbed hold of Park Ryul's head to pull him free. After a bit of tug-of-war, Lucky finally spit Park Ryul out. Mikhail asked if he was okay. Park Ryul looked at Lucky with a pout and said, "You know what? You're not lucky anymore from now on. How dare you bite your dad? But after being scolded, Lucky just made an even cuter little face, and Park Ryul couldn't stay mad at all. His anger fizzled out immediately. He told Mikhail to put him down. He was covered in dinosaur slobber. Park Ryul asked Mikhail, "How do I look right now? Am I dirty?" Mikhail told him he looked like a rag, but it wasn't that bad. When Park Ryul heard how Mikhail described him, he wanted to curse. Mikhail told him he should just take another wash and reach out to grab him. Park Ryul scrambled backward, but Mikhail still caught him. Then Mikhail just pulled Park Ryul's clothes right off him. He was so rough that he ripped the clothes clean in half. Mikhail couldn't believe it. How could the fabric tear that easily? Park Ryul was furious. "This was the only set of clothes I had. What am I supposed to do now?" Mikhail told him he'd buy him a new one. Just be quiet. Then he plopped Park Ryul into the sink and started bathing him. Even though Park Ryul struggled the whole time, Mikhail just kept scrubbing him hard. And that's how we got to where we are now. After Mikhail finished bathing him, Park Ryul was all out of shape and couldn't move a muscle. He yelled at Mikhail, "What did you do to me?" Mikhail figured the problem must have been with the last step. Park Ryul demanded, "What do you mean the last step? Was the last step violently wringing me out like that?" Mikhail admitted it was his first time washing a doll. Park Ryul was fuming. "What about me? Am I ever going to go back to the way I was before?" Mikhail just stared blankly at him without saying a word. Park Ryul kept pressing, "I can't even move my arms and legs right now. Do you know how to fix me and get me back to normal?" Mikhail started sweating awkwardly and still wouldn't answer him. That's when Park Ryul completely lost it and started yelling at the top of his lungs. Outside, the night commander, Karen, was patrolling past the room and jumped when he heard the shouting. The Grand Duke's office was always completely quiet. Could there be an intruder? He threw the door open and rushed in, shouting, "Grand Duke, are you all right? Where is the villain who dares to cause trouble here in the Orlov Grand Duke's residence? Knight Commander Karen will not let you get away." But when he saw what was going on in the room, Karen just froze completely. Karen couldn't believe Mikhail would let this doll get him into trouble, and Mikhail immediately put him in his place. When he saw Karen burst in like that, Mikhail asked him what was going on. Karen noticed the crumpled, misshapen doll in Mikhail's hand and didn't know what to say at first. He told Mikhail he'd heard strange noises coming from here, so he came to check it out. Then Mikhail played dumb, saying he hadn't heard anything at all. Then he brought up Karen's sister, Lena, and asked Karen if Lena likes dolls. Karen told Mikhail that he always buys new dolls for his sister every year on her birthday. Hearing that, Mikhail held up the doll in his hand and asked Karen, "Do you know what you're supposed to do when a doll gets all wrinkled and crumpled like this?" Looking at Grand Duke Mikhail standing in front of him, Karen started thinking about all the strange things Mikhail had been doing lately. He used to always eat together with the entire knighthood, but recently he hasn't joined them for meals at all. He's also been turning down invitations to go out all the time. And now he was asking Karen about something like this. Karen was getting increasingly confused. He stepped forward and grabbed Mikhail's hand, saying, "Grand Duke, you told us before that no matter if it's falling in love or going on dates, we shouldn't hide things like this, right? What's going on with this?" Mikhail was completely confused by what he was saying. Karen noticed the doll's hand. Last time he saw it, the doll was wearing that diamond ring, and now the Grand Duke was even giving it a bath. Mikhail realized Karen had gotten the wrong idea and quickly got up to explain that it wasn't what he thought, telling Karen to calm down. But Karen couldn't calm down at this point. He said, "You're the one who needs to calm down, Grand Duke. Of course, I'll respect it if you have some private, unusual hobby. I get it now. You've been staying in your room all day, even during mealtimes, and you've been avoiding going out, all because of this doll. This is hard for me to accept as your knight commander." Mikhail knew that nothing he said would get through to Karen right now. There was only one thing to do. He held Park Ryul out toward Karen and said, "You tell him. Explain to him it's not like that." But he shook Park Ryul for ages, and Park Ryul didn't respond at all. Karen just kept telling Mikhail, "Come back to reality, Grand Duke." Mikhail turned Park Ryul around and asked what was wrong with him. That's when Park Ryul started cackling and said, "Go to hell, Mikhail. You're the one who turned me into this mess." But Mikhail saw right through his little act. He turned and walked toward the window. Park Ryul had no idea danger was about to hit him. The next second, Mikhail held him out over the edge of the window. What do I need with this weird doll anyway? Goodbye, Park Ryul. Don't even bother coming back in your next life. When Park Ryul saw how high up they were, he started screaming in terror. He immediately apologized to Mikhail and said, "I'll say whatever you want me to say. Please don't let go, I beg you." Once Karen understood what was going on, he breathed a sigh of relief. Mikhail was just exasperated. He couldn't believe he'd had to go through all this just to prove he was innocent. Karen quickly apologized to him. Getting back to the original topic, Mikhail asked Karen again if he knew how to fix a crumpled, misshapen doll and get it back to normal. Karen said he did know. He picked up the doll from the table and explained, "You just use this massaging technique to work the cotton around inside the doll. You push the cotton from the stuffed side over gently to the parts that don't have enough cotton." Park Ryul thought it felt weird being massaged like that. It made his body itch, but it was kinda nice. When Mikhail saw what was going on over there, his face immediately darkened. He stepped forward and snatched the doll right out of Karen's hands. Then he started scrubbing and kneading Park Ryul hard himself. Even though Park Ryul kept yelling that it hurt, Mikhail just told him to hold still. Karen was worried he was pressing too hard and the doll would just fall apart. Mikhail told him it was fine, it wouldn't happen. After a little while, Park Ryul happily trotted over to the mirror. His arms and legs were round again. His face was perfectly symmetrical on both sides, just like before. "This is exactly how I should look. The effect is amazing, Mikhail." When Mikhail saw he was back to normal, he breathed a sigh of relief, too. Karen thought to himself that Mikhail could at least thank him, but he just said nothing. Karen was completely exasperated. It was obvious Mikhail had almost crushed Park Ryul just a minute earlier. Then Park Ryul reminded them there was still another problem. He didn't have any clothes anymore. How was he supposed to get around like this? His only set of clothes had gotten ripped. The two of them started thinking of a solution. Then Mikhail told Karen to contact Mrs. Bonds. He said to use the torn clothes from the bathroom as a pattern and just have her make a new one from that. Even though it's ruined, you can still tell what the size is supposed to be. Tell her to make it as quickly as possible and send it over. Karen quickly agreed. When it comes to Mrs. Bonds, she's the most famous seamstress in the entire empire. Tons of nobles commission her to make clothes for them, and that means she's the center of gossip for all the aristocracy. She knows every bit of noble gossip, both good and bad, better than anyone else. If they have her make clothes for a doll, it's going to start spreading that the Grand Duke is hiding a child in his residence. Even if Mrs. Bonds doesn't mean to say anything, rumors just blow up and spread like wildfire in an instant. Karen is worried about that, but it's been so long since he's seen the Grand Duke this happy, he doesn't want to ruin anything. So what on earth is he supposed to do now? No one would have thought that the usually cold and aloof Mikhail would feel his heart ache when he saw Park Ryul crying. During the days while they waited for the clothes to be finished, Park Ryul could only wrap himself in a bath towel. Looking at himself like this in the mirror, Park Ryul felt down. It was already hard enough when he was alive as a human, but who would have thought it would be even harder after turning into a doll? Because the towel was too long, he tripped over it while he was walking. Mikhail hurried over and asked if he was okay. Park Ryul lay slumped over the table, shaking all over. Nothing had gone right for him this whole time. It was already bad enough being trapped in this body, but on top of that, he'd had to suffer all kinds of humiliation. When he thought about it, Park Ryul broke down, crying. Mikhail was completely thrown off seeing him like this. He didn't know what to do. He didn't understand why seeing Park Ryul crying made his own heart feel heavy too. What did this tiny little doll really mean to him anyway? When Mikhail said it was lunchtime, Park Ryul was still wrapped up in his sadness and told him he didn't want to eat. This time, Mikhail just said, "Okay," and told him to stay put quietly before the servant came in. Park Ryul thought that was strange. He'd expected Mikhail to yell at him like he usually did. A little while later, a servant pushed the food cart in. Mikhail told him to come in, and after everything was set down, Mikhail dismissed him. Park Ryul was still sulking when he suddenly caught the scent of food. This wasn't the usual greasy smell of cheese and cream. It smelled spicy. Park Ryul jumped up excitedly and asked Mikhail what it was. Mikhail told him it was Hungarian goulash. He'd asked the head chef to make something spicy, and this was what they came up with. He told Park Ryul to eat it while it was hot. Park Ryul was so moved, he immediately grabbed a spoon and took a bite. The taste was exactly like home. Park Ryul was so happy he was bouncing off the walls and told Mikhail this was exactly the flavor he'd been craving. Mikhail said if he wanted it even spicier, they could just add more pepper next time. Park Ryul thanked him happily. Out in the hallway, a maid spotted someone lurking suspiciously. It was the head chef. The maid asked why he looked so pale. The head chef asked her if she'd heard what the Grand Duke thought of today's meal. The maid thought for a second and said it seemed like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But the head chef still couldn't relax. Normally, no matter what food he served, the Grand Duke never said a word. But today at lunch, he'd asked the head chef to make a dish he'd never even heard of before. After flipping through every cookbook from every era and every country, he'd finally managed to get the Hungarian goulash right. The maid was surprised too. Had the Iron Blood Grand Duke started ordering specific dishes? Did he suddenly change his taste? Back inside the room, Park Ryul was completely satisfied with the meal. It was so good it made him want to cry. When Lucky saw Park Ryul eating, he also had a look on his face like he wanted food. Park Ryul patted Lucky's enclosure and told him he wasn't food. Why does he always try to eat me every time he sees me? Mikhail said it's probably just because you look tastier than anything else. Park Ryul just gave Mikhail a deadpan look. Lucky was so rude. But the next second, Lucky bit him again. Park Ryul panicked and yelled for Mikhail to help. Just then, Libe came in and told Mikhail that the clothes from Mrs. Bonds had arrived. Park Ryul immediately perked up. He'd finally waited for them. He told Mikhail to have Libe open it right away. There were lots of different sets inside, all different styles, and they looked cute. But Park Ryul got angry. They're all dressed! Mikhail asked what was going on, confused. Libe didn't know either. Probably when Karen put in the request, he only said to make clothes for a doll. So Mrs. Bonds just did the usual thing and made all dresses. Mikhail asked if there were any clothes there that Park Ryul could wear besides dresses. Libe immediately dug through the box and found one set. He asked Park Ryul what he thought of this one. It's a shirt and pants. Park Ryul took it happily and thought it looked like it would fit. After he put it on, it fit perfectly. Park Ryul excitedly told Mikhail to come look. Seeing how happy Park Ryul was, Mikhail smiled too. Finally, he had new clothes. Then Libe told Mikhail there was one more important thing to report. This is an invitation from the Duke of Athlon House. When Park Ryul heard that name, he remembered immediately. This is another character from Red Prison, a man just as insane and obsessive as Mikhail. The day before, Park Ryul had been drinking happily with Mikhail. When he woke up the next morning, he found that Mikhail had chained him to the spot. In the original story, the Duke of Athlon was extremely ambitious. His ambitions didn't stop at just wanting the Grand Duke's position. Even the Emperor didn't dare take the Orlov family lightly. Yet Athlon only saw them as something to be jealous of. This inferiority complex had been building for a long time. He wasn't just out to challenge the power the Orlovs had held for generations. He also constantly tried to show Mikhail up. That madman who kept provoking Mikhail was the current head of the family, Konstantin Athlon. Park Ryul glanced at Mikhail sitting next to him. He remembered what happened in the novel. When Konstantin kidnapped Libe to threaten Mikhail, it was a crazy move. If it had just been an ordinary kidnapping, that would have been one thing. But to find Mikhail's weakness, Konstantin tortured Libe both physically and mentally. Libe handed the invitation to Mikhail and asked him if he was going to go. Mikhail thought it over for a moment, then took the invitation. I'll go. He sent a personal invitation to plan something. Since he's gone to the trouble of preparing something interesting, I might as well go see what it is. So Libe started preparing. Mikhail told him to leave nothing exposed and said he was looking forward to having some fun. Park Ryul watched this in disbelief. Mikhail had accepted the invitation. Looks like these two madmen are about to face off against each other, and he couldn't help but be curious about what would happen. After Libe left, only Mikhail and Park Ryul were left in the room. Park Ryul figured Mikhail probably wouldn't bring him along to a banquet hosted by his sworn enemy. He was a little disappointed he wouldn't get to watch the drama unfold from the sidelines. At dinner time, Mikhail had prepared something delicious for Park Ryul again. A spicy, cold salad made by the head chef and even steamed rice. Mikhail asked curiously if this really went well with rice. Looking at that fragrant, steaming rice, Park Ryul was almost ready to get down on his knees and thank the head chef. Mikhail asked him if he really loved it that much. Park Ryul told him, of course, when you're living far from home, getting to taste the flavor of your homeland is such a precious thing. Then he started shoveling the food into his mouth, completely satisfied. It would be even better if there was some wine to go with it. He turned to Mikhail and asked if there was any wine. Mikhail asked if he could even drink alcohol. Park Ryul told him, of course, even though he looks like this now, he could hold his liquor well. He didn't drink often, but his tolerance was still pretty good. He even had a nickname for it back in the day. When he said that, Park Ryul suddenly remembered. He'd possessed this doll body after getting drunk. If he got drunk this time, would he turn back into a human again? There was hope. So he immediately started begging Mikhail to let him have some wine. Mikhail told him a full glass was too much for him, so he'd just pour a little into Park Ryul's sauce dish. Then Park Ryul drank it straight down. He thought this was the best wine he'd ever had in his life. It was nothing like the cheap 4,000 or 5,000 won wine you buy from the convenience store. Mikhail told him of course it would be good. It was fine wine. The two of them clinked their glasses happily. After Park Ryul finished his first drink, he asked Mikhail for another. Mikhail indulged him and poured him another full serving. The more Park Ryul drank, the more he enjoyed it. He felt amazing, like he was floating on air. After one glass after another, he passed out completely. When Park Ryul woke up the next morning, he felt dizzy. He couldn't even remember how much he'd drunk last night. When he saw he was still stuck in the doll's body, he knew it wasn't going to be that easy. After he'd been awake for a few minutes, he noticed something odd. There were chains locked around his wrists. He froze completely. He immediately asked Mikhail what on earth was going on here. Mikhail slowly stood up from the sofa. "You're awake." Park Ryul was completely confused. What was going on? Yesterday we were drinking together just fine, wasn't it? Did I do something to annoy him when I was drunk? Or is there some other reason? He couldn't remember anything that happened last night at all. So he asked Mikhail, "What happened yesterday anyway?" Just as he finished talking, Mikhail's cold voice rang in his ears. "Shouldn't you ask me first what this is all about, Park Ryul?" When Mikhail heard the drunk Park Ryul talking about running away, his obsessive side immediately came out. When Mikhail asked him what obsessive top meant, Park Ryul froze completely. Mikhail's expression got even scarier. He asked again, telling Park Ryul he didn't have much patience. This is the last time he'll ask what obsessive top means. Park Ryul realized something was very wrong. He stammered, not knowing what to say. How on earth did Mikhail even hear that word? He clumsily tried to rephrase it for Mikhail. It means a crazy, obsessive person." He kept talking as he backed away step by step. Then Mikhail reached out and tapped the chains on Park Ryul's wrists. "Let me ask you another question. You're all tied up like this. How exactly do you plan to escape?" When Mikhail scared him like this, everything that happened when he was drunk suddenly came back to Park Ryul. Flashback to yesterday. When Park Ryul got drunk, Mikhail told him to stop drinking. Park Ryul was already drunk and kept demanding more. "Mikhail, you still have more wine, don't you? Are you really that stingy with me?" Mikhail laughed at him. "So you're throwing a drunken fit, huh? You dare talk to me like that?" But he still didn't give Park Ryul more wine. Even when Park Ryul gave him that look, he didn't give in. Park Ryul got angry and yelled, "You obsessive top, how can you be so sneaky?" When Mikhail heard him call himself an obsessive top, he asked what that word even meant. By that point, Park Ryul was too drunk to fear anything. He straight out asked Mikhail why he treated Libe the way he did in the future. Mikhail just stared at him confused. He had no idea what Park Ryul was talking about. Park Ryul ranted on, listing everything how Mikhail would tie Libe up, hit him, starve him, lock him up. The more he talked, the angrier he got. Mikhail said he didn't know what he was talking about. He'd never abused Libe. Park Ryul told him he would do those things soon, and he had to escape before that happened. When he heard that, Mikhail's face completely changed. By that point, Park Ryul was already drunk with blackouts. He kept slurring, asking Mikhail to give him that diamond ring back, and then he passed out. Back to the present. After remembering everything, Park Ryul felt like the sky was falling. Mikhail asked him, "So you'd even chop off your own chained arm just to get away from me?" Park Ryul immediately started begging for mercy. He said it wasn't like that at all. He was drunk yesterday. His head wasn't clear. "When I drink, I turn into a total dog. I don't know what I'm saying." He even barked a couple of times to prove it. But none of this worked on Mikhail. Mikhail looked at him sharply and said, "You think I'm easy to push around, don't you? You think I'd fall for a lie like that?" Park Ryul was terrified out of his mind. What could he do to get out of this? Then Mikhail spoke again. "Did you want to run away from me from the very beginning? Answer me, Park Ryul. Beneath Mikhail's anger and feeling of betrayal, Park Ryul could sense something else, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. Now wasn't the time to overthink it. He just needed to beg for mercy. He immediately dropped to his knees in front of Mikhail. I was wrong, Mikhail. Just let me say what I have to say. Who ties up a doll for no reason like this? I need to find my original body, okay? I still have a huge student loan to pay back. If I just disappear like that, my professor will never let me go. And there's Lucky, and all these other problems. They all need to be sorted out. Even after hearing all that, Mikhail still didn't believe him. What you said yesterday wasn't, I need to find my body. You said you needed to run away. You also said you'd read the story about me and Li Bei. Now Park Ryul had no way to prove he was innocent. Should he just tell Mikhail straight out that this is all a novel world? What if Mikhail loses it and kills him after hearing that? Just then, Mikhail reached out, grabbed Park Ryul by the head, and lifted him up. He threatened Park Ryul. Tell me everything you're hiding before I tear you to pieces. With no other choice, Park Ryul did exactly what he said. After Park Ryul explained everything, Mikhail finally understood what he was saying. So what you're saying is, the Wodefia Empire is just a world from a novel, and I'm just a character in that novel, and I'm madly in love with Li Bei? Park Ryul told him that was exactly right. He was surprised Mikhail took it easier than he thought. He'd expected Mikhail to think he was talking nonsense and cut his tongue out for it. Then Park Ryul added, the story I read isn't necessarily set in stone, right? If we can live our own lives freely, then all this will become real for us, won't it? Even after everything Park Ryul just said, Mikhail still had one question he couldn't figure out. He didn't understand why he would break Li Bei's ankle. Park Ryul immediately corrected him. Actually, it wasn't breaking, it was cutting it clean off. That's why he's called an obsessive top. By now, the atmosphere had gotten a lot calmer than before. This was Park Ryul's chance. He remembered that in the original story, Mikhail got angry every time Li Bei refused to talk to him or wouldn't let him touch him. So Park Ryul did the opposite of what Li Bei did in the original. He got a running start toward Mikhail, jumped right onto him, and wrapped his arms around him. Mikhail didn't understand what he was doing at first. Park Ryul held tight to Mikhail's clothes and said, I want to stay close to you, Mikhail. Even if you tell me to leave, I won't go. I won't leave you. I'll stay by your side even if I die. He thought to himself, to save Li Bei's ankle, I just need to do the exact opposite of what Li Bei did in the original story. When Mikhail saw him like this, he chuckled softly and hugged Park Ryul back. You really are an incomprehensible little thing, aren't you? When Park Ryul saw Mikhail wasn't angry anymore, he breathed a sigh of relief. He'd gotten through this crisis after all. Since things were working out, they needed a different ending than the original novel. To stop Park Ryul from running away, Mikhail even had security bars and new locks installed on all the doors and windows. A new day began. Early in the morning, Lucky wanted to snuggle up to Park Ryul. Park Ryul happily ran toward him, but at the last second he dodged out of the way. He'd learned his lesson this time. He wouldn't let Lucky's cuteness fool him again, or he'd just end up getting bitten. How many times do I have to tell you, kid? Dad isn't food. What am I even going to do with you? You're cute, but you have no manners, and you always go for a bite. If it wasn't for me, who would even take care of you? Sitting off to the side, Mikhail was amused by the whole exchange. He looked over and noted that Park Ryul was back to being his round, chubby self today. When Park Ryul noticed Mikhail looking at him, he turned and ran straight toward him, jumping right up and clinging to him. You were looking at me, right? Mikhail didn't deny it and asked what was wrong. Park Ryul said it was nothing. He just really liked this feeling. It's so hard just staying alive and keeping all my parts in one piece like this. I don't know how much longer I must keep going like this. He'd already gotten the chains taken off, which was good, but now there were security bars on the room's door and window. Even though Karen and Li Bei said the bars were to stop Lucky from escaping, Park Ryul knew the real reason. They were there to stop him from running away. Mikhail really is terrifying, he thought. Just then, Mikhail asked Park Ryul, which of these outfits do you like the most? When Park Ryul saw all the clothes laid out, he froze. They were all formal banquet outfits. Mikhail didn't understand why he was so surprised. You knew about this, didn't you? Duke Aethelon is hosting a banquet, and I'm going. Of course you're coming with me. That makes sense, doesn't it? In his head, Park Ryul immediately screamed, "No, not! Is he crazy?" But he knew if he said that out loud, he'd be dead for sure. So he put on his biggest smile and said he loved it. "I love it! I'll go wherever you go." He thought to himself, this guy really is an obsessive top through and through. Who brings a doll to a fancy banquet? But if he refused, who knows what Mikhail would do to him. Then Mikhail told Park Ryul to pick out the outfit he liked best. Park Ryul tentatively suggested a dark blue one. Mikhail said he'd expected Park Ryul to pick white. When he heard that, Park Ryul panicked and immediately backtracked, saying white was beautiful too, just like an angel, and that he'd look again. It was exhausting work, having to tiptoe around Mikhail to keep his obsessive tendencies from flaring up. After some back and forth, Park Ryul finally settled on yellow. The outfit came with handmade leather shoes crafted by a master artisan, and even the bow tie had a huge gem set into it. What other dolls have a luxury setup like this? Then he heard Mikhail's voice. "Are you ready?" Park Ryul turned around and looked. Mikhail was wearing a sharp, handsome formal suit that complemented his striking features perfectly. Good grief, he's so handsome it's almost unfair. He was so stunned he almost forgot Mikhail was supposed to be a crazy obsessive. If he has a face this good, I guess being a little crazy really isn't that big of a deal. Fashion really is all about the face in the end. Before Park Ryul could even process what he was seeing, Mikhail had already stuffed him into his coat pocket, leaving only Park Ryul's head sticking out. So now I'm just going to be a head sticking out of his pocket at the banquet? Park Ryul couldn't believe it. Who brings a doll to a formal banquet? People are going to laugh at him, and at me. He tried to get Li Bei and Karen to talk Mikhail out of it, but both just said, "Nothing can stop the Grand Duke when he's made up his mind. You might as well just give up." If his head wasn't already so big, Park Ryul would have pulled it all the way into the pocket just so no one could see him. Seeing how reluctant Park Ryul was, Mikhail told him there was another solution. Park Ryul perked up and asked what it was. Mikhail said he could just have Karen take a sword and cut Park Ryul open, rip the fabric, pull all the cotton out, and just put the empty fabric in his pocket. That way he wouldn't have anything to worry about. It's a good plan, isn't it? When Park Ryul heard that, he immediately behaved himself. "I'm fine. I'll just keep my head sticking out like this. It's perfect." Now that everything was settled, Mikhail told everyone they could leave. As they walked out, Mikhail glanced at the window, the one with the new security bars and lock. He thought about how Park Ryul called him a crazy obsessive before. He still didn't understand why he was so obsessed with this little doll, but he knew one thing for certain. When Park Ryul said he wanted to run away, all the moments they'd shared together flashed through his mind. Just thinking about this little thing disappearing made all the blood in his body run cold. He'd never felt anything like this before. Outside, Li Bei fumbled with the stubborn lock for ages before he finally got it open. Park Ryul just looked completely defeated, like he really can't avoid being the Grand Duke's little doll head sticking out of his pocket at the banquet. When Mikhail remembered Park Ryul calling him a crazy obsessive, he couldn't help but laugh quietly to himself. Actually, it didn't sound that bad.